And we're live.
All right, we are.
Ta-da!
Boom! We are live. We are offline, online, everything online. We are live. Welcome back to Social Business Hour on this June 22nd. I am Brian Fanzo, and I am joined, as always, for almost 2 years now, my co-host every single Monday, Rachel Miller. How are you today, Rachel?
Hey guys, I am awesome. Excited to be here as always.
Me too. I'm excited. This is gonna be a fun conversation. As always, if you're watching this, if maybe your first time watching, we have it going live on Periscope, Meerkat, YouTube, Google Plus, everywhere else that we could possibly stream it. And as always, join the conversation. Jump in, add questions. Our guest today is Jason Keath from Social Fresh, an event I've talked about it a lot, and so I think you guys could really add some value on questions you want him to answer, things that you're curious about, and what he's been doing on building, in my opinion, one of the best events that has going right now. So, Jason, welcome to Social Business Hour.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. This will be your best show and your best guest ever.
All right. Well, I like it. We just got to set that bar high. I like that. I like it. I like it. So Jason, give us a little background about yourself, even prior to starting what is Social Fresh Conference now.
Yeah, totally. I went to art school, graduated from UNC Charlotte down in the South. I did some leadership training out of college, traveled the country to a bunch of different colleges. Then I went into the agency world, which is really what I wanted to do when I was in college and become a creative director ultimately. I kind of got close to that. I was a creative lead at a couple agencies in the Southeast, and very quickly this was where social media was just taking off, like MySpace and YouTube and blogs, kind of pre-Facebook bump, and started becoming the social media guy at all these agencies, and people were asking us to pitch business. People were asking for blog strategies and social strategies, but no one was really buying. It was a really low uptick on pitch to kind of package being sold in ratio. So I saw very early that there was a education gap in this new thing called social media. So I ended up going out on my own, starting my own agency, selling that agency, then going out as a consultant independently. And through all of that, that education gap was very clear. So I decided, why not start a conference and let people kind of learn from the best practices, right? Bring in smart folks like David Armano, and PBS and NPR came, and Ford was there, Chevy. We had a lot of brands that were doing things well, and had them all come and tell their stories. And the conference was way more fun, way more rewarding, more profitable. It was just basically better in every way than doing the consulting or the agency work. So I took all the money that we made from that conference and I rolled it into 4 other conferences over the next 4 months, all across the country, which I will never do again. I almost killed myself. And the rest is history. Now we're doing our 17th conference coming up in September in Tampa, Florida. And it's bigger and better than ever, and we're the kind of longest running social marketing event out there, very advanced content, and that's where we are today.
Nice, I love it. And I think it's interesting. You said you were talking about like kind of social media and the fact that social media really needed training. I would say a lot of events you might be questioning to say that if those events are focused on educating and training or more like talking at. And I think that's understanding that was your mindset also makes it kind of why I think your event separates from other events that I've been to, because I think not only is it about educating, but it's about really that community feel. So I'm curious before we get into question one, like a lessons learned, when you said you did 17 events and then you went and decided to do it all across the country, I'm sure going from that one event to events across the country and then scaling it back, what did you learn about the offline aspects of social media that maybe surprised you from what you were doing from the consulting, from a standpoint of were people willing to learn as much offline at these communities or at the conferences as they were online, or how did that kind of work, your first kind of impressions?
Yeah, it's interesting. You're really asking me to explain the psychology of human beings, so it's tough to get a definitive answer there.
You started the bar high.
So here's the thing. People go to conferences. Let's start here. People go to conferences for a ton of reasons, right? Some people are trying to get away from their boss. Some people are trying to get away from their family. Some people are just trying to get close to the beach, which our conferences usually are near a beach, so we've got that going for us. But and some people really are trying to get educated, learn about a specific topic. A lot of people, I think, are going to connect with other people in the industry. A lot of people are going to kind of judge themselves against the top content and say, do I really know what I'm doing? Not do I really know what I'm doing, but do I know what I need to know? Like benchmark themselves and just confirm that they're doing everything right. This campaign that we did that we got good marks on, is that something that's a best practice? Was it a fluke? Should we be getting on Pinterest, Instagram? What is everybody else doing? It's a place where you can go. You can learn a lot of the things I'm saying online, reading blogs, but when you go to a conference like Social Fresh, you can ask Brian Fonzo, you can ask Jason Keath, you can ask Scott Monty and Jay Bear these questions and have these what I call hallway conversations. And a lot of the gold is in those hallway conversations. Half of the stuff you learn is in the networking. But we really do focus on making content super actionable and practical so that the next day you can implement stuff. That's something we tried to do from day one. We've gotten a lot better at it. I think we're the best in the business at it now. So people, there's entertainment on stage always. There's always people that kind of, have their shtick and going to say what they say, but we always challenge our speakers to really cut out the fluff and make it actionable and practical so people can, have a couple things from each speaker that they can do tomorrow to improve their business.
I think that's a really admirable goal for the event, because I know when I was going to events a lot more frequently a few years back, the keynotes were great, but it was always those, like you said, the hallway discussions, the breakout groups, like the talks you had at lunch were always the ones where you actually had something like, oh, I'm going to scribble that down, I'm going to try that when I get home. You rarely got that from the keynote. You were just kind of more in awe that you get to sit that close to that person. So I think it's like the overall goal for an event.
Well, and there's a flow too. When you're doing a presentation, there's a flow. You have to entertain and educate, right? You can't bore people, and you can't just entertain and not educate. But there's also a flow for the conference. When you're putting a bunch of speakers on stage, you also have a mindset of this person's going to be a little bit more shock value entertainment. This person's going to be all education, and you try to bring people, away from their strengths to include the other side as much as you can. So you try to bring someone like Chris Brogan and help him, really make it more actionable, which he's doing on his own now, and he's doing an amazing job at. And you try to help speakers that aren't as experienced but are very smart be a little more entertaining. And we do training for that and help them along and give them tips for that. So you're really trying to make sure each individual presentation has both elements, and the whole conference kind of has a flow, and you don't have only entertaining speakers or only dry educational speakers. So it's it's a lot of balance.
So speaking of flow, let's jump into question one. You kind of touched it on a little bit already, but how has online and offline changed over the last couple of years? I know we're definitely, whether it was society, I know it was a big kind of a segmentation initially. You had your online world, and then you had your offline. And now the lines are definitely blurred. So what changes have you seen?
Well, I think one thing, the community tools have gotten a lot better. Facebook groups is something we preach as a great tool that's really underutilized for people and businesses of all scales and sizes. I think Facebook groups didn't exist in its current format when we started Social Fresh. The online community back then was basically Twitter. People had tweet ups, and that was cool. That doesn't exist anymore, so that's gone away. I think you have still a lack of businesses understanding how to do offline community in a lot of ways. There's some businesses that do it well, but I think there's two things: the commitment to do it right, the time and the money that you need to do it right is really underestimated, and the value of investing in it is underestimated as well. I don't think a lot of businesses see the value in community as one thing to invest in, investing in a customer base or a fan base as a community, or understand what that means. And I think they don't really, if they don't get that, they're definitely not going to get the offline community value either. There's some exceptions like nonprofits and political groups and some startups, but for the most part, that knowledge isn't there, and that investment is really not understood. So I think some of the ways it's changed since we started Social Fresh for us is we've also learned the value of investing in that community. We've changed how we do it. We mainly invest in our community through Twitter, through email, and through Facebook groups online. Offline, we invest more and more in little events. So this year we're having one conference we've combined our East and West conference into one big conference, and we really want to blow that one up and make it bigger. We feel like we've figured out the secret sauce of making a conference really good, and now we feel comfortable scaling it to a larger size and still keeping the intimacy and the value of it. But that being said, we want to have smaller events. So we're probably going to do a few small West Coast events, a few small events in the Northeast and in the Southeast, where our fan base is the largest. And I think touching base with people physically, having those hallway conversations as often as you can, and getting them to talk to each other in person, and being responsible for making those introductions is an immensely valuable piece. And I think some businesses are getting it, especially the startup world, but that there's still a gap there, a huge opportunity for a lot of folks.
No, I love hearing that, and I think one of the things I heard you say that really made me smile was that your dedication to community, right, and the dedication to what but there's not always, especially starting small, there's not a direct ROI on that very early on. You end up spending a lot of man hours, a lot of time in something that probably took how many events before you start really seeing that true value. And I think one of the biggest problems of events today, I think across the board, is they believe the digital connection is only what happens at the event with some hashtag, or maybe like right after with a couple blog posts. And you've done a really good job of making it kind of segue throughout. And like you said, you have some Facebook groups. And I've been very lucky. I've been a participant. I've been a little bit more involved through each one of them. But when you look at like things that not only offline, online that's changed, but what about the actual event audience themselves? How have they changed? Because one of the things that I noticed last week when I was at one of the other social events, no one looks me in the eyeball, right? Everybody's looking at their device. But I think your events, you do a great job of not only making the hashtag part of the event with the digital community, but you embed that into the offline experience. Because I remember the Hyatt or the Hilton, or I think it was the Omni. Omni was up there on stage, fully participating with the hashtag, and they had their own Instagram accounts. So what is your approach to the actual event offline, connecting it with the online community?
Yeah, well, I mean, so we have a challenge at Social Fresh. We have a small event. 500 people is our max. We're going to raise that to 1,000 people next year. But we have 200,000 people that come to our blog every month, right? So that's a huge gap of people that get to really experience our best product. So one of the things we do is we do a live stream. We freely live stream a lot of our content, sometimes all of our content, depending on strategic decisions for that event. We always trend #1 in the U.S. for years and years running now. Several events. We've gotten really good at it and learning how to do that. And we don't do that just because it's cool to trend. We do that because we want people to know about it. We want people to join an online conversation, and Twitter is our #1 channel for social media. It's where social media professionals hang out a lot. So that's important for us to make sure people are seeing that and taking part in it and know about the event. It's also very important for us to, and I think if anybody that's doing an event, to have partners that are hugely invested in the event. So when we work with a hotel or we work with sponsors, we try to find unique ways for them to get access to our audience, unique ways for them to challenge and interact with our audience. We did that with Omni when we did 2 conferences with Omni Hotels last year. We also got their hashtag in addition to ours trending as a top hashtag. They weren't able to beat our hashtag necessarily, but they were up there as second or third trending in the U.S. And we did that in very creative ways, and we emphasize that. So even down to the attendee, we do things very specifically at the beginning of the conference to make sure attendees are meeting each other, to make sure they're shaking each other's hands, to make sure they're having fun with each other, and we try to do that and is without being too corny, without being too high pressure. It's very much an art to find that, and we've done everything from speed networking to brainstorming activities where people brainstorm together to, I'm sure we've done a lot of cheesy and corny things as well, and we've kind of found a sweet spot in the way we do it. So it's a lot of little things that build relationships on every level. There's so many levels, from speakers to sponsors to venue partners that provide things for the event, attendees, people watching online. It's all about trying to give everyone involved as much access to each other as possible and help those relationships blossom, and that's really where the magic happens. And you're right, it doesn't happen overnight. So when we started our blog in 2010, we had the conference first. We didn't have a blog for probably 6 months. We started the blog, and one of the reasons we started the blog is so that we could have a touch point for people in between the conferences, just like we do with the Facebook group now and other things. And that blog didn't really generate business for us for the first year, but it was an investment, just like all of these other things.
So I think maybe that's a new hashtag, relationship conferencing, because I think that's actually an element of what you've done. Because I think I felt You know, I remember arriving the first time I went to one of your events, and I felt like it was, you know, mainly because you do have a little bit of a limitation. You also have one track only. I know as of right now, still one track. But you know, one of my biggest things, my takeaways was these speakers were so well planned and so integrated that even the people that were not speaking yet or had already spoken were part of the people asking questions, right? They were raising their hands, engaged in the audience. I mean, I was sitting next to Jay Bear and Kim Garst, and they were asking Jason Miller from LinkedIn questions after his presentation. To me, I've never seen that before, and I think that has to do with your ongoing relationship building. And I think with question 2, we kind of talked about it a little bit with what must be included for, you know, providing real value. But when you think about like this is something I always ask anybody that asks me to work with them, is I say, what does success look like for you for your events? What does that truly look like for your participants? If you know, hey, if my participant get this, what does that look like? Because I think that'll give people a little bit better frame of mind. Because I think other events could really learn from you on that side of the house.
Well, so for me, success at our conference is when our attendees go away, they put action items in place from presentations they saw, and 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months down the road, their business is improved because of what they learned. Their job is easier, their career advances, they start a business with someone they met at the conference, which happens all the time at our event, they get a new job, they hire a new client, they implement a new campaign from an idea they got at our conference that improves their business, their job performance, whatever their priorities are. That's success for us. And to do that, you know, you really have to make sure you don't have speakers that are up there repeating the same thing that they're hearing everywhere else. I mean, that in itself is a huge challenge because there's a lot of people. Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. Evidently, the spacebar does that. Which is cool to learn. But so, you know, it's a challenge to have a speaker, because there's some things I don't teach online or at the conference because I think it's too basic, because I don't think most people know about it. And there's a lot of advanced practitioners that come to our event that already know a lot. So it's a challenge. You know, not everything you hear at a conference is going to be new, but I guarantee you'll hear something from every speaker because of the way we challenge and work with them that will be helpful to you, that will be an action item, that will be an aha moment. Every single speaker will have some piece of that. And I think that's also a reward to the attendee, because they don't want to listen to speaker after speaker of stuff they've already heard or stuff they think they know. So that's a challenge as well, is making sure the content engages. We do a lot of things to make sure that we have short presentations, 25 minutes max, talk time on stage to keep people's attention. We challenge our speakers to include examples outside of their own company. We challenge our speakers to you know, give us their deck and their storyline of what they're doing on stage early, so we can work with them and improve, sometimes with coaches, professional coaches, for presentations. So we do a lot to make sure the product on stage is engaging and educational, and I think the success is when that goes into the attendee's brain and comes out the other end by them implementing something good for their business on the other side.
Well, I'll tell you, you got a little ROI here on Meerkat. So Owen Hemseth said he met his 2 best clients from referrals that he only got from Social Fresh. And shout out to him. I know he has a tough battle going on right now, and it's cool he's jumping in Meerkat.
Thanks, Owen. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Owen giving you some love on Meerkat, and you know, I think that's telling right there. 2 of his best clients came from a Social Fresh event, and actually probably 2 of the examples I use the most from events that I've been to came from your event as well. I talk about how the PGA Tour was using social and the Spotify team that was there, because I thought they not only included great examples, but did an amazing job of making it actionable and repeatable, right? And I think that is something that you're kind of talking about there. So I love that. So for everyone that's watching, hashtag SbizHour on both on Twitter. We're live on streaming on all the places. Bring in your questions. We'd love to, if you have questions. I see on Periscope you have lots of buzz going on. Subi Zimmerman's in there. We got a lot of great people in the chat. So I know, you know, when we're talking about some of these characteristics, and this is a big, this is a really big, you know, I think telling factor, is you care not only what the audience takes away, but you really care about the speakers you're presenting and what they're presenting. The fact that you limit it to 30 minutes, even for someone that talks fast like me, is a stretch. And I remember, you know, I was talking to it was Jason Miller from LinkedIn after his event, after he presented at your event the one year, and he said, man, he's like, he was so fired up and knew that it was a short amount of time, but he felt for the first time that he didn't have to drag something on, that he didn't have to put on like a dog and pony show. So I think that's, you know, that's a really interesting element. So what other characteristics, either online and offline, have you learned that have really helped you grow the community itself? I think because your Facebook group, I remember you had one for individual groups, and you had one for a larger group. So what are some of those learnings? So I think we could all learn how you've kind of tweaked, I'd say failed fast is a great example, to really grow your communities both online and offline.
Yeah. So tactically with the Facebook groups, here's our kind of short education. We created Facebook groups for all of our events. And then, about 3 years ago, we went to a West Coast and East Coast event. So we just had one West Coast group and one East Coast group. And what we learned over the last couple of years is those groups do really well 3 months before the conference, amazingly the week of the conference, and pretty good 3 months after the conference. But the other 6 months of the year, they really languish because we weren't able to moderate those types of groups, and we were also building audiences year after year on top of each other. So it was a weird thing. So now what we've done this year, and we feel really good about, is we've made all of our groups that are for the events temporary. So the max they'll be is 6 months, right? So we'll start them 3 months before the group and end them 2 to 3 months after the group, maybe even short, maybe a month after the event. I'm sorry. And what that does is it allows people to meet before the event, talk about important things the week of, and still reference content from the conference a month or so after. And then we've coalesced all the people that have attended events in the past, all the people in the Social Fresh family, speakers, sponsors, bloggers, people that read our blog, everybody that's passionate about Social Fresh, we have in the Social Fresh community group, and you can go to facebook.com/groups/socialfresh to find that. And that's basically a place for people to share questions, share insights. We don't do links in that group. We rarely share links. The one exception is kind of job postings. But even with that, it's something we're thinking of eliminating because links take people out of the group and they stop conversations. So we are trying to generate conversations and online networking there, and that's tactically something that's worked really well for us. That group's still really small, but I love the conversations in it, and it's going to keep growing, and we're really happy with that online version. Offline, I think, at the conferences itself, we've had to fine-tune a lot of things as well. Learning how long breaks should be. People get really bored if there's an hour break. People think that you can't do a 5-minute break, so we found 15-minute to 30-minute breaks work really well. Same with lunch. If lunch is longer than 45 minutes, it's like too long. People start looking for somewhere else to go or something else to do. 45 minutes. Most people only eat for 10 to 15 minutes, and then they have a half hour to network, right? So figuring that out was pretty enlightening, and giving people actionable ways to engage online with the hashtag, giving people actionable ways to engage with our app, which we spent a long time finding the right resource for, giving people really tangible ways to network with each other and instructions on how to do that. We're still getting that right and still figuring that out, but we've really come a long way there, and I think we do a good job at it. So it's all testing, fine-tuning. We survey after every conference. We ask the hard questions of which speakers were good, how good were they, which parts of the conference did you not like, why or why not, and we listen to that and we iterate.
So I'm curious, from a standpoint, actually it's interesting. I have probably two of in my opinion, the best community builders out there with yourself and Rachel on this interview, and I think that that's an underrated skill. And one of the questions that came in actually through Periscope, so we'll bring in a question from Periscope. Those that are bringing it on Twitter, I think Rachel will bring those in because unfortunately, too many devices going on that I can't keep the Twitter feed up as well. But one of the questions actually came in, and it was kind of an idea, and it was more in the idea of what are some of the actions that you've done to facilitate the relationships 365 days a year for some of the speakers and some of the sponsors? Because I think that's something that we all kind of talk about, but I think that's something probably harder said than done. So do you have anything that you've done to kind of, because one of my favorite things that, just to put it out there so people that understand, Jason, you're very humble. You have no ego. You go into these groups, these Facebook groups, and you ask for advice or tips, or say, hey, I'm doing a blog post on this, any input? Hey, I would like to do this at the conference, any input? You've done this 17 conferences, and yet you're still willing to ask questions like that, where, to me, part of the time, I remember at first was like, hey, if Jason Keath is willing to ask questions from his audience on what we want in the event, why the hell is every other event so not willing to do that, right? So I'm curious, just from that relationship building that allows you that confidence, what are some of the things you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing to always keep in mind is you always need to be asking questions. You always need to be learning about your audience because the audience is changing. What they need to learn is changing, especially social media. What we taught that was advanced social media marketing 5.5, 6 years ago is completely different today, right? There's some things that are static, but 90% of it has changed. What people need to learn today, the base level of knowledge of a social media marketer today is so much higher. So we really have to keep pushing that bar. And if we're not asking questions, if we're not looking for advice in those categories, we don't know where that bar is. So that's something we're always working on. And the content at our conference commonly reflects the most asked questions of our audience. So I think that's really important for everyone to do. I mean, your content for your business should always reflect what your best customers are asking questions about. That's a great rule for anybody to follow, and we've always done that. Um, Keeping the sponsors and speakers engaged year-round and the attendees and everyone. We do it with our content on our blog. If you go and look at the post we have up today about 54 warning signs that you might work in social media, it's always we've done that exact same post 3 times now. Not the same content, but the same description. And always we get it from the community. So there's social speakers in there, there's sponsors in there, there's people from the Facebook group. And we credit them. Some of them are from our staff meetings, but we really try to include people along the way. We do blog posts about top tools. We do blog posts about tips to do this, tips to do that. We do like curated posts, a lot of list posts, and we're always reaching out to our speakers and our sponsors and even our attendees for that. And I think that's a way to do it. We try to do happy hours at conferences we go to. When I go to HubSpot's inbound conference, when I go to Salesforce's conference, Blog World back in the day, I went to a few times. We would always try to do a Social Fresh happy hour. We sent Yarby over to South by this year and did some interviews with him and had him attending events. So we're just always trying to keep it going in whatever way possible. I mean, I don't think there's a 3-step secret to it. I think it's just always looking for the opportunities to keep the connections alive, and content and events are the way to do that.
So damn, there's no easy button. I was hoping. I keep asking.
You just automate it all, Brian. That's the secret.
Yes. Yeah, automate. Poor automation. So Rachel, do we have some questions coming in on Twitter as well?
Yeah, we got a couple cool ones here. One person is asking for more information about your app. So how exactly does it facilitate networking, and does it work all year round, or is it just event specific?
Yeah, so usually event specific, although we are working on using it year round, kind of how we have learned to use Facebook groups year round better. We're working on that with the app right now. The best app that we've used is called Attendify, and it's a service. It'll cost you about $1,000 per event, and they are by far the best version. We've used BizHour, we've used all of them, and BizHour's great. There's other apps that are great. Attendify I think is the best, especially if you want social integration. There's another one I can't remember the name of that is really good, kind of an enterprise version. But anyways, the way we use it, we put all the things that you would expect from an event app. You have the schedule, you have speakers, you have sponsors, there's networking in there. The cool thing about Attendify is you can one-click connect or request to connect on LinkedIn with anyone in the app without leaving the app. It integrates the Twitter hashtag feed very easily. You can post just to the app, and you can also select to share that post out to Facebook and out to Twitter as well. So it kind of pulls together a lot of conversations. Another thing that's changed over the years is that smartphone usage has skyrocketed, right? Specifically for our conference, that's on the iPhone. About 80 to 90% of our attendees are on iPhones. And our attendees are typically have 2 to 2.5 devices per person connected to the internet at our conference, which is a whole device higher than the average at most conferences.
Hold on. Before you get into the detail there, just the fact that A, you thought about that data, B, you know it, and C, that you're willing. Like not only demographic, iPhone versus Android use. I guarantee other events couldn't even tell you how many people downloaded their app. I mean, I think the app idea has been such a disconnected process. I mean, I even went to one event. I won't name drop them, but they even told me, well, the event has nothing to do with the event app. The event app is a whole other department. And I was like, oh, no wonder that makes no sense and nothing's connected. So I had to point that out because I think you're brushing it over as if part of what you've learned, but I would kill to have more events that kind of took into that into account. So kudos for you on that.
Yeah, we haven't always had that data, but the more important it's become to our audience, we need to know more about it. So, and Attendify is great. You can go to socialfresh.com/Attendify, and it'll take you to like their landing page. We work with them on a few things, and the benefits of their app, they'll even give you some of that data if you use Attendify. They'll be able to tell you some of those things. We've independently verified some of it, but Attendify is good at providing engagement numbers, how many times people have used the app, what device they're logging in through, the percentage of uptick of how many people are downloading. And they also have a higher level plan that's, I think, $1,500 to $2,000 that you can use year-round. So that's why I mentioned that we're considering using their service for a year-round app. But we're also playing with the idea for a custom year-round app that we use. So, I think with our blog and our email and our social networks, we don't have as big of a demand that some businesses might for an app that we would use year-round. But right now we're pretty happy with using Attendify as our app of choice for our events, and we mainly focus around the events. Another thing to keep in mind with Attendify, another benefit is that the app allows you to send notifications to people at the event, so you can let people know, lunch is starting in this room, don't forget to come to the happy hour here, that kind of thing. So it's another touch point to get to people, and it creates a standalone app. So you can go right now and download the Social Fresh Conference app for iPhone or for Android, and it's not like the Attendify app and you have to log in Attendify and then find our event. It is our app that they build and they submit to the App Store. Unless you're going to the conference or thinking about going to the conference, you might start getting updates about the conference if you download it. So I would think about that. But you can check it out and delete it and see what you think of Attendify by just checking out our app.
No, awesome. I love it.
It seems the future of event apps is really bright with being able to push content to not just people attending, but people who are considering attending or live streaming. It seems like that's an exciting time to be building apps right now for events.
Yeah, and I'll throw in that all the technology in the world is kind of a 10%, 20% bump. I think the core is to get the stuff right on the stage, and what your product is, your stage, and the people on that stage. And the secondary and almost just as important thing is to make sure that you have a networking opportunity that you've thought through and is valuable to folks.
So speaking of networking, we have another question from Twitter. So Louise is asking if you have any tips for approaching speakers during networking time. Like what's best practice there instead of just rushing up and screaming?
Yeah, it's tough. I think having, this is what I tell everybody at our conferences, at the beginning of our conferences, is to have a focus point for why you're at the conference. So there's probably 10, 20 areas of your business that you can improve, or your social marketing that you can improve. Pick one that can make the biggest impact on your business, and it's not going to be the only thing you learn, but when you have opportunities to talk to people about things, whether it's a speaker or whether it's fellow attendees or questions that you ask of speakers after they're on stage, whatever those things are, try to keep that one focus point in mind of what you want to improve, because I think that really helps you put an interesting lens on the content you're subscribing to, the content you're consuming, and allows you to think about it in a different way that makes it much more actionable right away. So I would think about that one focus point, and I would ask them about it. Be like, hey, we're really struggling with Pinterest. We know our audience is there, but we're just not kicking ass at it right now. What have you seen? What resources have you seen? What businesses have you seen that we need to be paying more attention to? And I would also ask very reasonable questions and open-ended questions. Don't go say, what are the 3 steps that we need to implement on Pinterest to make sure we're getting 1,000 fans a week, things like that. I would make them open-ended, and typically I would just be very humble, very thankful of their time, and probably avoid them when there's a huge crowd around them. And the one thing that's good about our event is most of our speakers stick around for the whole event. So there's plenty of opportunity to meet them and say hello and have interesting conversations with them. And also, everyone loves for you to ask them about them rather than ask them a question that only you benefit from. So feel free to have a real conversation with people.
Okay, that's good advice. We're seeing lots of comments on Periscope. They were all kind of nodding. Lots of people saying, yeah, I agree. And another thing I think that's really interesting, because yours is one track, and you advise everybody to kind of have like that one key takeaway. I mean, a focused strategy at an event as an attendee as well as a speaker is something I don't think enough events kind of focus on. You do a great job of kicking off the event with that. You do a great job of really focusing and saying, like, here's what we're trying to deliver, but you also have to have that. So I agree. I think that's interesting from a takeaway perspective. I also think it's another one where I think too many people come up with like this overthought, overplanned question for a speaker. And for me, it's amazing how many times when someone just says, "Hey, I saw on Instagram you had a rough flight coming in. I would love to hear what you thought about, airlines and how they're using social media," and like almost kind of personalize that, because I think that's the element where someone comes up there with like, I called it, don't give me a blog title question, which is what you said, right?
Yeah.
Give me 3 Pinterest use cases. Like, I'm not giving you a blog post output right now. I will engage. I think that's of great value. So I'm curious also we had lots of people that were kind of talking about your technology comment and the idea that it's really is about the people and who's on stage and what their value is.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've limited it to 500 people? You're now a next event, not the one that's in September. You're gonna probably move that number up close to 1,000. What are some of the things that you would say are to the point where you're getting comfortable enough where you can expand that number? Because I mean, let's be honest. The fact that you were willing to limit the number and you wanted to control the audience is beyond, is rare and unbelievable, because you were actually limiting income, right? I mean, you're turning away people that are willing to pay, but it's because you were focused on the product. So I'm curious, what things have you learned that kind of now has allowed you to kind of expand, or is it really growing that audience to the point where you probably have enough returnee attendees to hit the 500 mark as it is? Now, if you want new audience, you almost have to expand. I'm just curious on that side.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a marketing element there and finding the customers. I think for us, it's being more comfortable with the content quality. I think the quality of our content on the stage has been better than most events for a long time, but we didn't want to ever grow to sacrifice that. I feel comfortable now with all the resources we put into being able to train speakers, being able to identify speakers, being able to curate a really good lineup. The vendors we work with, the sponsors we work with, having a process for a lot of things, the networking. I think all of that has kind of come into an area where we feel that it's very repeatable, that we feel very comfortable with it, and know that the quality on the other end of it won't be harmed by the scale of it. And a lot of what we did last year in 2014 was to prove that to ourselves, and we grew the event last year, by like 100 people per event. And it was great. It was our best ever. We had more accolades at the event. I had more people walk up to me and tell me face to face, "This is the best conference I've ever attended. This was amazing. I'm definitely coming back last year." We had more return ticket sales than we've ever had this year. So, we're doing something right, and we've had enough confirmation, enough research for all of our company to feel comfortable kind of expanding that next year. It'll definitely be a challenge. It's not easy to sell 500 tickets. It's going to be even harder to sell 1,000, right? But I feel like we have the resources to get there.
I think the emphasis on education really can't be overstated, and when people walk away learning something, they'll sell it for you. So you're going to have this, viral network of people who are just super stoked on it. So I think that's definitely working in your favor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we definitely have that. I hear people all the time that hear about Social Fresh Conference from private, like, brand Facebook groups and private recommendations, and we love that. That's great.
I'm curious, you've added the workshop feature, or maybe the workshop feature was there before and I wasn't as well aware of that.
No, that's new.
That's new. Okay, so give us a little background on the reason, because I think let's piggyback on the training. I think most events worry about broadcasting, and they worry about their big name to sell a marquee stage and sell the most tickets possible. You've kind of taken that approach away. You started with a training aspect. You now have a workshop aspect that I'll be involved in a little bit as well. I'm curious, what's the thought process between that, and really how has that kind of transformed moving into the September event?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing to understand, there's one element here of booking the speakers for the stage. We have to be very careful with our speaker lineup, because we do have fewer speakers than most conferences because we have one track, right? So over the course of 2.5 days, if we have 20, 25, 30 speakers, another conference has 5, 6, 7 tracks, they'll have 150, 200 speakers, right? So that helps their marketing. It helps them be able to do a lot of things. but what it limits is kind of the quality of their event, because you can't train 200 speakers, you can't train 150 speakers. You're really you can't even vet that many speakers. You can't be sure if you're putting 150 people on stage that they're going to be good. You just can't. And what you make up for in the quality, you make up for the quality potential by having quantity. So people have a lot of choice, and you probably have a lot more people, so they have a lot of networking. So events have different value offers, right? Ours, we try to make a very intimate event with high quality on-stage content that has great advanced social marketer networking, and we do that well. The workshop comes in to be important because people always want intensive training. You can't do intensive training at a conference when someone's on stage for 25 minutes. I can give you 2 or 3 nuggets in 25 minutes for each speaker that you can really learn from and you will improve your business with, but I can't instruct you on how to implement those 2 or 3 nuggets unless I have an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, right? So we've had requests for that in the past, but doing that is expensive. It's very time intensive to pull together instructors, to pull together the time to plan something like that. But we feel very good about it this year because we've been putting together some online training pieces, webinars, and we've got our content marketing template that was a huge hit with our audience available for sale online. So we're trying to pull together those pieces and some of our speakers that have worked with us on those pieces into a much more instructional element of the conference. It's an add-on ticket. It's $500 more. You come for a full day. You get to go to 2 3-hour intensive sessions. So we actually do have tracks when it comes to that, and that's because I want people, if they're going to do intensive sessions, I want them to be very sure that they're going to an intensive session that they will benefit from. So one of them will be our Content Converts, one of them will be social advertising masterclass. We've got productivity, creativity, we've got analytics, and we've got community. And with those topics, those are highly requested topics, and those are topics we know that help people improve their business. Each one of those classes is 3 hours. You get to choose 2. It's going to be smaller. They're going to be 30 to 50 people, depending on how our venue situation works out. We've already sold half the tickets to those without even having a description of what the topics are. So we just put the topic descriptions up, or we just put the topic titles up a week ago, and we'd already sold basically half the tickets for those. We might extend a few more tickets for that. But those are going to be even more intimate than our regular conference. Those are going to be opportunities for people to ask questions, to get much more instructional kind of classroom curriculum style help. And it's not going to be a semester's worth of help, but it's going to be more than you get at most events that don't have a workshop style. So we like that. We're exploring that. If it's successful, we might do these as a standalone option throughout the year. And take them around so that they're more accessible. But it's been something that's kind of requested, and we never really had the secret sauce to put it together, and I think we've learned enough now about our own opinion about what social marketing should be. We've learned enough from our speakers, we've learned enough from our audience, and we've learned enough how to logistically pull it together that we feel really good about. So I think it's going to be a great portion for the conference.
I may have missed this at the beginning, but who leads these workshops? Is it the
Brian Fonzo
or?
might be leading one of them.
Oh man!
We've got Jason Keath potentially leading one of them. It's going to be a combination of our partners, our staff, and our speakers. And not all of that is shaken out. We've got about half of that figured out right now, but we're pulling together some really smart folks. A lot of them are either speakers or past speakers at our event.
So I'm curious from a standpoint. We got some questions coming in, people that are asking from a standpoint of your takeaways. I know you have a podcast, the Social Toolkit podcast. I've been lucky enough to be on there for a couple of the episodes that you guys are doing, and you're really focusing on educating people on not only what tools they're using, but actually what industry leaders what tools they're using, not just kind of soapboxing tools. I'm curious from a standpoint of when you were talking about training, and I've had a lot of people kind of talk about the training of the speakers or the vetting of the speakers. Can you give a little bit more into what that, how do you find those speakers? Because I think oftentimes from the list that I've seen, there's not the speakers that are, I would say, running the circuit or every person's heard every name of. You have the home runs. You've had the Jay Bears. You have PR Sarah Evans, ones that I think are always providing amazing value. But how do you find those, I would say, the diamond in the rough speakers that are maybe with a brand, but they're not on the speaker tour? What are some of you, I wouldn't say give away your trade secrets, but I'm curious to see how you find those ones that are really providing awesome value.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. We have a whole content committee that helps pull this together now. I used to be the only person doing it, but there's people that we've tried to get to speak at our conference for years that we know are great practitioners and aren't really out there in the public very much, and they're really hard to get. They're really, some of them are really difficult. There's a speaker at Marvel and at Whole Foods that I'm still trying to get to our conferences, and we also don't just take anyone. So we're looking for people that have good stage craft ability. We're looking for people that are practitioners and are comfortable giving tactical advice and have something new to say and have a case study to present. We're always looking for a balance. So like I said, we have a small lineup. We have maybe 20 to 30 spots to fill. So we also have to take in, this is a business, so we have to take into account who's going to sell tickets. People buy based on brand names. Brand names come in two categories, either the person or the business. So if you see our lineup and there's no Fortune 500 companies in there, you may tell me one-on-one in a private conversation that you don't care if there's big brands. You want small to medium businesses speaking because that's what your business is. But you're less likely to buy if you don't recognize any of the brands up there. The other bucket is people. So the Jay Bears and the Chris Brogans and the Sarah Evans and Scott Montes of the world, they help make people comfortable with buying a product, buying an event, attending that event and learning from it. So we have to take that into account. We also want to elevate people that aren't, having Lauren from the PGA Tour. I think she was a great speaker. I knew she was really smart. I had heard her on a podcast. I had seen her blog about some things. I had a couple Twitter conversations with her, and we knew she was smart. We take very seriously recommendations of our favorite speakers. So I'm often elevating them and asking them, who would you have speak at a conference? Who is someone good that you don't think is getting enough attention? That kind of thing. We're often, especially giving a lot of attention to women. Both of our conferences last year had more than 50% female speakers, which we thought was really important to focus on, and we've got that for this year's conference as well. And all of that is networking. All of it is every day throughout the year looking for those opportunities, looking for recommendations from other folks that I think are smart, looking at podcasts, looking at blogs, looking on Twitter, on Quora, everything we can. And it's a lot of work. It's not easy at all. For every speaker we find, we've probably researched and approached, 5 or 10 people at a minimum, if not more. And we get a lot of pitches for speakers. We don't even accept speaker pitches anymore because we get too many, and it's just not possible for us to vet them all. So it's a long process. I don't know if we have a science to it, but what we try to do is cast a wide net, ask smart people, and really look for people that fall into the value focus areas that we believe in for the event.
I like your style. I think that's kind of the approach that we've taken on Social Business Hour. Obviously, much smaller format, but the way that we select guests has a similar rhyme and reason to it. Definitely.
This isn't small. You guys get a ton of people. There are thousands of people watching this.
It has grown over the years. Which actually, there's a question from Twitter to you specifically, Jason.
I love Twitter.
How have you dealt with the growth of your team as the events have grown in popularity?
Yeah, well, so two people that make Social Fresh amazing, probably more so than I do, are Nicole Alonzo and Jason Yarborough. You can follow them at Nikki's Notes, NIKIS NOTES, and at Yarby, YARBY. I mean, one of the things I've had to learn is to know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and I'm still learning that to this day, and to outsource more, to find people that are good at things, to be comfortable with things being 90% as good as they could be, and getting them out the door. Those types of things. We staff up for our conference. We usually have probably 20 people on average at the event that are, some of them are volunteers, some of them are temporary paid staff, some of them are our full core staff. Getting those people together and working with them has been very interesting. We could go out and pay a company $25, $30 an hour to bring people in, but they might not know what social media is, they might not be comfortable talking, they might not know who the speakers are. We'd rather work with people in the industry and bring them in as part of our team and train them and find people that are passionate about the event to work with us. So that's always an education, and finding those right people has been very interesting. I think for me, a big thing is passion, finding self-driven people, and being able to help them do their job and not get in their way, which I'm definitely not 100% there yet. I'm still learning that today. But we have some great people that help make Social Fresh happen. We've got some past interns that still work with us on kind of a contract basis with Cassandra Lepre and Lauren Gray. We used to have Nick Cicero, who was a great blogger for us, and now has gone off to start his own startup, Del Mondo. So we've worked with great people that are very passionate about the industry and are very driven and have helped make Social Fresh what it is.
Yeah, so Nick, my relationship with Nick started because of a blog post he wrote on your site. Then I met him at your event, and then that segued into a friendship. We've partnered on a couple projects. I was just on his podcast that went live this Friday called The Creators Class.
Yeah.
So there's a relationship born and bred in the Social Fresh
I love it.
there. So I think I've seen that a lot. There's lots of people that are, and actually, Lauren, there's lots of people that I met for the first time face to face at your event that I'm now, I would say beyond Facebook friends, right? So we've turned into friends that that is kind of segued into Oracle and Chris Moody. I started doing work with that group, and it all started because I was, met them in the Yahoo team. So I got one of the questions came in, and I knew I wanted to ask you this. So we have, I wouldn't say we have a truly powerful, influential community, but we have people that are willing to tweet on your behalf. So is there any speakers or any person that's out there that said, hey, Jason Keath would love to have them on at his future event, but he hasn't had them yet? Is there one that you can name that we can amplify for you and say, hey, pay attention to this? So I don't know if there's one off the top of your head, or maybe you can tweet it out later, but I can't get on the spot. But I would love to know.
So my dream interview would probably be a Richard Branson. I think that would probably be one of the top on my list, or Seth Godin. Those people we could probably get if we could afford them. So that's probably a different challenge. Most of the challenges with getting speakers for us is either they're out of our price range or they're unavailable, or logistically it's hard to get with them. But if anybody personally knows Richard Branson and could call in a favor, that would be wonderful. If we could all work on that. I've met him once before, and he's just an amazing business person, entrepreneur. And I'd love to. We want to do interviews like that if we could ever afford to bring people like that to the show, which is highly expensive. But we're definitely getting closer to raising that bar and bringing in interesting people like that.
Rachel, do we have another one from Twitter? I think I saw the Twitter feed pop up.
There is one, but I think I'm gonna skip it because I came up with one of my own.
All right, I like it.
I always like to ask kind of the future of questions, and so we're talking. Social Fresh is changing the future of events, but what are your predictions? Where do you see events going? Are we going to see more localized regional conferences that are smaller, more niche, or are we just more Dreamforce style, it's all for you?
Yeah, it's everything. Events are powerful and wonderful things, like shaking hands in person, having in-person conversations is never going to be replaced. I think you'll see more businesses having events, community events. I think startups are having these more and more often where they have regional events to grow their community. You see it with Product Hunt. You see it with all kinds of community crowdsource-based companies are doing this more often, like Uber and Airbnb and Etsy and all kinds of groups around the country. I think you'll see a lot more of those. But events are simple. Technology is great. Having a Facebook group or an app or a Twitter hashtag, those are great ways to integrate with the digital from your event. But at the end of the day, just having great people, great partnerships, and great content is always going to be the core to an event, I think. And if you're not putting care into those things, if you're just saying, if you want to speak, we'll have you speak. We're not going to worry about what you're going to say, or we'll have networking, but we're not going to really worry about how it's going to happen, or those types of things. If you're not putting some type of cultivation into those, that's where things are going to fall apart. So people just have to realize that you have to invest in those areas of the event and figure out what's most important for your goals for your event and make those happen.
Well, I'm curious too. From something I always see tweeted. I'm one that is the three most important things in any conference is coffee, Wi-Fi, and power. Right? That's usually what is.
You usually run out of all three.
Yes. So, but I'm curious. You kind of have a school of the Jay Bear where you give away value, you give away the streams, you kind of put a lot of content out there for free consumption. And with like Meerkat and Periscope, we've seen the NHL, we've seen the PGA Tour even threaten to throw people out of the event that are live streaming it. I'm curious from your perspective, and this is very selfish, and from a live streaming, Meerkat, Periscope, any of these technologies, I think the technology has less to do. What we're worrying about less is the technology, more about what kind of access you're giving online fans. I'm curious, what are your thoughts there on the Meerkat and Periscope from a standpoint of you were already streaming it? This isn't like a brand new stream, but you're now empowering maybe a few people or even your audience to take different streaming approaches.
We would love for people to live stream our conference in Periscope and Meerkat. I think we're bringing people in to help us do that better. If people want to put it on Meerkat or Periscope, we'd probably ask them to just point people to our live stream because it's going to be much better than anything they're sending out quality-wise. We spend money on that, so it's an investment and it's really good. If they want a Meerkat and Periscope, they should do the hallway conversations. They should do backstage with speakers. They should do interviews with people they meet, sponsors. It's a great way. You can see live demos of software in our exhibitor area. The happy hours are probably very entertaining, I would think, to live stream. So
you had poetry last time, right? It was social media poetry. I wish that existed for that last year because I had a ball at that. I think we'll have to stream those kind of. I agree because I think nobody. I mean, it's just like an NHL game. No one's watching it on some mobile shaky phone. It's the same person. We'd rather watch it on the the TV, but providing that unique experience. But I mean, I think you have a lot of, like you said, you strategically plan other aspects of this that aren't streamed. I think are really powerful.
Yeah, we did I forget what we called it, live jazz karaoke or Twitter poetry or something. It was a very interesting experience. It was funny. Some of it didn't come off too well. Some of it was hilarious. And some of these things will not translate over live stream video. Some of them will be very boring. But if people want to try to do it, that's fine. I mean, the only problem I would have with Meerkatting and Periscoping is just our bandwidth. Whether we can stand having 12 people live streaming on our Wi-Fi signal. If people want to do it on the cell phone signal, maybe we could allow that. It just depends on what people want to do. I think it's probably a good thing overall because they're bringing their unique audiences to us. They're promoting the event to their community, which I think is great. There's probably some technical issues that would run in, but nothing we haven't dealt with before. People could always live stream or do a lot of different things, upload video in the past, and we've had technical solutions to that. So I think it's a great idea. I think more people doing that in unique ways and offering unique value would be wonderful.
That should be. I think that's gonna be the shirt I need to wear. Is live stream and respect the Wi-Fi, because I flip over to cell phone data because as a live tweeter and someone that works with influencers, the last thing you want is the Wi-Fi to go down. And I think that is that is important. I love your approach to it. I think that's a
we have to tell people to make sure they're not watching Netflix and make sure they're not watching the live stream of the stage that's in front of them or uploading video or have their Dropbox sync on. Like Wi-Fi is hard and it's expensive at hotels. It's way more expensive than it should be. If I told you the bills that I've been quoted for Wi-Fi, it would blow your mind. But getting Wi-Fi to work is very important for the people there, and that's our priority. So if we have to do technical things around that, then we will. But I don't think it's a huge issue.
All right, you got everybody excited. Drop the info. What's the dates? Who the headliners were?
Social Fresh 2015 is September 23rd through 25th. The dates are those 24th and 25th is the main conference. The 23rd is the workshop. We've got Chris Brogan, we've got Jay Bear, Sarah Evans, Scott Monty, Patron is speaking, HP, Hewlett Packard is speaking, Priceline, American Eagle, The Today Show. We've got really an amazing lineup. Dannon, Twitter, Buffer. Working on a couple others that I think are going to be really cool and really interesting. You can go to socialfreshconference.com and check it out. I think Yarby even threw out on the hashtag a $50 off coupon. Looks like he used the hashtag SbizHour. So if you use that this week, SbizHour, that'll be $50 off. Price is up soon, so check that out. But really, it's advanced content. It's not too advanced where if you're a year, 2 years in the industry, you won't learn something. But if you have been in the industry for 5 or 6 years, like the average attendee at Social Fresh has been around for 5.5 years in the industry, you'll still learn a lot, and you'll connect with people that will bring value to you and to your career for years and years to come. So check it out. We would love to see you in Tampa in September.
Awesome. And I'll tell you this, we've been doing this for almost 2 years, and we've never had an event organizer or event mastermind like yourself on for a lot of reasons. I think providing value, unique perspective, and they're actually putting out a great product. And I'm glad that you're the first one that we were able to get on, because I think this was awesome. Overall, just pure value across the board. And I use the term knowledge bombs every once in a while. People are putting on Periscope like, hey, he's dropping knowledge bombs. So that was impressive. So yeah, we appreciate that. We appreciate Yarby. Yarby's been supporting us as a community for a long while. Big fan of his as well. And people put in there, they were curious, if you're a guy in social media, do you have to have a beard now? Because it does seem like we all have the exact same look.
Well, there was a meeting.
Yes, yeah. The meeting. Except Vincenzo, I don't know if Vincenzo can grow one. Therefore, we might have a problem there on that side. But thanks again, Jason. We have a special kind of news for those that next week is finally, after all these years and all these days, Rachel and I will actually meet face to face for the first time, and we'll be doing this show for the first time from California as Social Media Day. San Diego is June 30th. June 29th is the Monday. So we will be there in San Diego for the show. Actually be able to turn Social Friend into hugs and selfies, which will be flooding the internet, I can promise. Kristen Cardos from our team and Vincenzo Landino from our team will also be there. So it'll be an awesome time in San Diego next week. So a week from now, we will no longer be able to say that Rachel and I have never met in person, as crazy as that sounds. So, Rachel, anything else I didn't miss or any secrets I haven't revealed that I usually screw up doing so?
No, I mean, just to close the show, if, Jason, you want to drop another knowledge bomb, what's one thing we should all be doing to close the gap between our online and offline communities? So
first, make sure you go to Coronado in San Diego, and that's going to be a great event. Tyler does a great event out there for San Diego Social Media Day, so I'm jealous of that. One thing to connect your online and offline audiences, I'm stalling. I think at the end of the day, getting people really engaged with your product or your community, getting them attached to it. There's a great article we have recently, and it's one of our Social Fresh tips that talks about the scale between small commitments and large commitments when you bring people into a community. I think it's a commitment curve. So you want to start with really easy ask. So political organizations do this really well, where they ask people to sign petitions. That's the easiest thing you can do. You're literally saying, I'm putting my name on this because I agree with it, and I hope you can make some change because I added something really easy, right? A retweet or asking a question in a Twitter chat is really easy initial commitment. And then you want to build that. You want to get them on your email. You want to ask them to write a blog post. You want to ask them to show up to a happy hour, ask them to show up to the conference, ask them to sponsor or speak or whatever, right? Partner, be a media partner. So think about your commitment curve and what are some really easy ways you can get early fans in on, and how you can escalate them with larger commitments. Because the reason you do that is because once you make, no matter how easy the first commitment is to your business or community, the second one is easier for them to make after they've made the first one, and so on and so forth. So that's how you get them to make really large, supportive gestures for your business or your community.
Love it. Drop knowledge on the way out. So everyone check out socialfreshconference.com. Check out the hashtag SbizHour. There is a promo code out there from those guys. Thanks again for doing that. I'm excited to be there, excited to be a part of it, excited for what you're doing.
Yeah.
I was even showing off the swag that I had sitting on my table. He was giving away battery chargers. I can't. It was last year or the year before. So I had that sitting on my desk, showing off the Social Fresh love, the orange love, which matches my Chuck Taylors as well. So
there you go.
See everybody again. We're here every single Monday. Next Monday we'll be from San Diego live. We appreciate it. There you go, a little Social Fresh bandage love on the screen. With that, we bid you adieu. Thanks again, Jason. Rachel, I will see you a week from today.